All right, today we're jumping into the amazing story of a language you probably use every single day. We're talking about the origins of English. So, have you ever stopped to think, where does English even come from? I mean, it's everywhere now, right? But its journey had to start somewhere with specific people in a specific place. Let's dig in and trace that story back to its roots. Okay, so to really get English, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning. The foundation of it all, that lies in its Germanic roots. Yup, you heard that right. The language that would eventually become English, it wasn't originally from Britain at all. It was actually brought over by tribes who spoke Germanic languages, and they came from mainland Europe. And this timeline here really paints the picture. We're talking way back, around 450 AD. You had these three main tribes, the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes. They started sailing over from what we now call northern Germany and Denmark. They landed in Britain and settled down. And their language? Well, that was the seed that grew into English. And get this, the name English itself, it comes straight from the Angles. Kind of cool, right? But Britain wasn't some empty island waiting for them. And that brings us to the next piece of the puzzle. What happened when they met the people already living there, the Celts? So these Anglo-Saxons show up, and they meet the native Britons, who are speaking their own Celtic languages. Now, the Anglo-Saxon language took over pretty fast, so for everyday words, there wasn't a ton of borrowing. But the influence is still there, kind of like a ghost in the landscape. You see it in the names of rivers, like the Thames or the Avon, or even in place names like Dover. Those are ancient Celtic names, hanging on for centuries. All right, so the next big change for English wasn't from a sword, but from a prayer. A whole new faith was coming to the island, and it brought a very powerful and influential language with it, Latin. And you can see exactly how it unfolded right here. First, Christianity gets introduced around 597 AD. Then, the church becomes this huge center for, well, everything, especially learning. And what was the official language of the church? Latin. So all of a sudden, the English language needed a way to talk about all these new complex ideas about religion and scholarship. So you can basically think of the church as a direct pipeline, just pumping Latin words right into English. And we're talking about hundreds of words that we still use all the time. Words like school, master, candle, and angel. This also started to create a kind of split in the language, where the words from Latin often sounded a bit more formal or smart than the good old Anglo-Saxon words. So, just when things were starting to settle down, guess what? More boats on the horizon. Starting in the late 700s, ships from Scandinavia began to arrive, and with them came the Vikings and the next huge influence on English. Now, the Vikings weren't just raiders. A lot of them actually stayed and settled down, especially in the north and east of England. And their language, Old North, was also a Germanic language, which meant it was pretty similar to the Old English being spoken. Because they were so close, living side by side, the languages didn't just borrow a few words. They basically merged. This was a huge deal, and it gave us so many of our basic everyday words. Think sky, egg, give, skin. And probably the most shocking thing of all, even pronouns like they, their, and them, those came from the Vikings. They literally changed the grammar of English forever. So when you really think about it, the English we speak today isn't just one single language. It's more like a beautiful, complex mosaic. It's built on a strong dramatic foundation, sure, but it's also layered with Celtic place names, made richer with scholarly words from Latin, and shaped by the tough, practical language of the Vikings. It's truly a living piece of history. Every single sentence we speak is an echo of all these ancient meetings. This explainer was brought to you by the IELTS Focus Solo, 847705973, an English center that specializes in IELTS preparation.